It's for everybody to be involved. So don't hesitate to ask a question, challenge something you've heard, ask for clarification. And my job is to keep the conversation around this, but this is everybody's panel. Just by way of brief introduction, we're dealing with an environment that I think everybody for the last 10 years we've all been talking about. The recorded music industry has been struggling a little bit. Retail value is half of what it was a decade ago. Last year, 3 records cracked the 2 million mark. A decade ago, 25 records cracked the 2 million mark. We definitely have this decline in the acquisition of recorded music. At the same time, we have this incredibly exciting, explosive behavioral change happening online with digital channels, right? YouTube delivering 1 trillion videos a year. 30% of those are music and music related. That's generating an advertising ecosystem that the music industry hasn't had available to it in the past. Sirius satellite radio, 23 million subscribers. Pandora, 8.2 billion hours of listening a year. Right? There is massive demand for music online. So the thing that we're going to try to get at, the question we're going to try to answer, are you taking like
on Instagram?
the question we're going to get at here is, how many likes am I going to get on Instagram?
16.
How do we take this demand and transform the business model, the traditional business model that we call the label, but for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to sort of characterize as investing in artists. How do we take that model of investing in artists and make it work, given the trends that we're seeing in the marketplace? And that, I think, is the label of the future. And there are going to be a lot of topics that we could spend hours on here. But we're going to try to move this conversation. We're going to try to keep it snappy and crisp. And we're going to start by focusing on what are those trends. What are the things that's exciting each of us in the business? And I'm going to ask these guys to introduce themselves and in the context of their introduction, talk about one of the things that they're most excited about in terms of generating opportunity, creating value in this new business of investing in artists. So I'll start with me real quick. My name is David Marcus. I spent my career in the music business. I've worked in the major label system at Warner Music Group, where I ran our global artist services. I worked at Ticketmaster. I was in the digital music business from '98 to 2005. And then I was in entertainment lawyer before that. So I've seen lots of different sides of this business, and I've seen a fair amount of this evolution. Rami, why don't we start with you? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Rami Perlman. I work at a company called The Audience out of Los Angeles, although I am a New York native. And we focus on social media and brand endorsement for celebrities and music artists, and I run the music department there. And we are also doing some artist development in a new program that I'm running called Artist in Residence. As far as trends and things I'm excited about, I mean, we were kind of talking about this a little bit beforehand, but the idea that technology has made it so anyone can make a great beat, a great recording in their bedroom, and almost the idea that everyone now has to up their game, where it's not just about music anymore, but it's about entertainment as a whole, wherever that might manifest, whether it's in social or whether it's in a video or whatever it is. But I'm kind of mostly stoked by the independent artists who are coming out with a fully realized brand and vision, and it's exciting to me because I feel like anyone can do that who has that kind of vision. So.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Israel. I run a company called Cantora. We're part record label, part investment fund for early stage entertainment startups. There are 3 assets we focus on: recorded music, publishing, and equity in startups. And what I'm excited about right now is leveraging artist resources to get them equity in upcoming startups.
Hi, my name is John Rudolph. I'm a senior advisor to a venture capital and investment banking firm in LA. I'm the chairman of a company called Elias Arts, which is mainly composition for advertising, as well as an advisor to several tech and media companies. And what I think I'm most excited about is what I would say is a separate, I don't like this word, but I'm going to say it, ecosystem that's developing next to the traditional business, where the reliance on the traditional business is virtually nil, with the exception of touring, probably. And the ability for artists to, if you would, not function in the same way that they have in the past, and what that means from an independent artist perspective, what that means from what the label of the future, the stratification between independents and majors, and how we look at investing in those as we go forward.
My name is Roger Gold. I spent the first 17 years of my career at Warner Music Group. The last couple of years I was reporting to Leora Cohen, overseeing global recorded music's distribution, catalog, licensing, and 360, working with David Marcus. I had left Warner in October, and I'm now working on some entrepreneurial opportunities, which I'm very excited about, but unfortunately I can't really go into them very much at the moment. Oh, to me the most exciting trend going on right now, and I really, I guess to me, the thing that seems most obvious to me is I think that it is a wonderful time to invest in music, recorded music and music publishing, because I see a flattening overall macro business and a very robust new business in advertising in particular. And I think that companies like YouTube are paving the way for us to be able to monetize that channel in a way that we've not seen before as a business.
Hi, I'm Matt Harmon, and I run Beggars US label group here in New York. Beggars is basically umbrella, a couple of historic sort of labels who are still very active, 4AD, XL Recordings, Matador Records, and Rough Trade. I think that the trend that I think I'm most excited about, I think, is the convergence of sort of various parts of our business. I think the convergence of licensing and promo and marketing and those things kind of coming together. And I think that we probably are still acting in the most traditional sort of sense of folks who are sitting around this table. But I think that what's exciting to us is sort of being able to continue to do artist development, sign great bands, and do what we do as a label, but also finding ways to make money out of those new opportunities as well.
Great. Oop, this is not. I'm going to continue without the mic. So Roger and John both referenced something that I want to start with, which was the idea of an ecosystem, an environment that allows artists to sort of come to market without having to rely on traditional major label structures. And Roger, I think you guys are making a similar point, which Roger suggested that the thing that's most exciting to him is the advertising opportunity that comes from these now sort of mass distribution models, YouTube in particular. And I want to just start with that advertising idea and talk a little bit about, you know, how that new form of revenue affects the business of investing in artists. And I want to get at it from two perspectives, because there's the traditional structure of I'm a company, I invest in artists, and I have now this new form of revenue I can access. And then I want to work our way towards this question of I'm a new entrant. There's this platform that has with it returns that I can access on my own, and how that changes. So Roger, you know, talk a little bit about your perspective on how the label business is affected by this new revenue stream.
Well, I think that it brings a lot of interesting points together, which is, you know, I think that for independent labels, for individual artists, for major record labels, there is a challenge as to how do you actually monetize this category. And I think that's a category which, you know, whether you look at YouTube, which is probably the best in class example, as I mentioned, but you know, Facebook will probably is there, but will soon be even more so there. And I think other distribution platforms like Twitter will become viable advertising channels for artists to take advantage of. And so for the incumbents, I think the challenge is really how do you position your business so as to access that value stream as effectively as possible, and how do you actually draw that towards your content, and how do you marshal it? And I think one of the problems we've seen in the past is, I think especially for major labels, is there's an ongoing question of whether digital services are friend or foe. And I think that it's, you know, that the real challenge is how do you take advantage of them? How do you work with them in a way as a partner to take advantage of not just the revenue stream, but optimizing the channel for that revenue stream? We haven't really seen it yet. So I think really when you're a major record label, I think today you are probably taking advantage of the advertising opportunity of YouTube. But how are you paying your artists? How are you compensating them? How are you encouraging them to take advantage of that channel? And where on the other end of the spectrum, in the independent space, or even the independent artist, unsigned artist space, how do you access that channel fully? How do you get your fair share of those revenues? How do you make sure you maximize your access to it? And how are you designing your business and your approach so that you can be part of it? I don't think there is access for artists individually the way that there could be an opportunity for those artists to access that channel outside of the label system, and perhaps there's an opportunity for them to provide that for them. But I think that is the big challenge.
So how do you organize? So Matt, you come at the business currently. You're the one. Well, Jesse also, who's going to bring a different perspective to it. But from Beggar's perspective, how do you guys address this opportunity, this advertising opportunity? Are you organized differently? Are your resources allocated differently? Are you making more videos?
A couple questions in there. I mean, I think as far as resourcing goes, I think that over the last 6 months to a year, I think we've had to kind of completely kind of reassess how the company is resourced. I mean, as recorded music sales are sort of declining, we're obviously finding revenue in a number of other places. But actually, right now, we have a lot of people sort of selling physical records to record stores, which again is remains a sort of a business. There's a lot of record stores out there, more opening all the time. But I think that we've had to sort of take a look at how we are. I mean, we have one person working just on, claiming videos on YouTube. It's literally a full-time job. There's one person doing it. She's sick for a week. We're just not claiming any videos on YouTube. So I mean, there's obviously money, but you have to be able to go get it. And I think that that's become a real challenge. And I mean, as an independent label, we're not, we don't have a massive team. We have 45 people here in the U.S., and we're doing everything from licensing to marketing and A&R and production. So we don't have a huge digital team right now, and I think that that's something that we're going to need to. I think every independent record label is going to need to look at, if they're going to remain competitive, because recorded music is definitely sort of shrinking down as far as the overall revenue.
Right, in terms of sales. So we have this new revenue. You gotta be prepared to go get it. You gotta be organized to go get it. Jesse, as an independent label owner, the smallest label sort of here at the table, what was your experience going and getting that revenue? Was that meaningful to you, or is that something that you just felt was sort of out of your grasp?
Unfortunately, it's barely dented, the revenues that we brought in, and we've tried all sorts of strategies to change that. And what we've really learned is that it needs to come from prolific artists that's willing to, create lots of interesting content and really, put themselves out there to build a following on something like YouTube. We can't do that for them.
Yeah.
And with the 15 bands we've worked with, besides the ones that have been upstream to major labels, we haven't been able to really make it happen.
So it's a scale game, right? It's a scale game
100%.
either across a roster of hundreds of artists with hundreds of millions, billions of views, or individual artists who have core followings that are really committed to their content. John, you're excited about that's part of the ecosystem you're excited about. What's your perspective on the new entrant model there? How does a new entrant come in and take advantage of those opportunities?
I mean, I don't know how they do it. I mean, as far as what catches them and how they go. I think the thing that's most interesting is how many there are, and there's been a couple who've crossed over. There's the Carmens and a couple of them have crossed over. And if you haven't, and I don't know if this is actually published somewhere, but maybe Ned can put something up because we've done some collective research. When you go down the list of, I mean, I think Voice Avenue has 550 million views.
800.
800 million views and like 2.5 to 3 million followers and
subscribers.
Yeah, subscribers. And so so you look at that, and as you go down the list of what's happening in their world, yeah, they're going to have to have some reliance on some of what I'd say the more traditional pieces of the business. But for the most part, they don't need it. And now, again, it's a handful right now. What that's going to be over time, but we often talk about the music business as it's contracted. We talk about it as a singular thing, but there's this whole other kind of new music business that's developing on the side that's not actually part of a growth of the current business. It's forming in its own way. They have their own relationships, and there's real money pouring into that cycle. Now, there's folks who have gone in to try to, not formalize it's not the right word, but probably monetize it, raise CPMs, do those things. We've heard the names, Full Screen, maker, big frame. There's probably 8 or 10 who are really working hard to raise money, and they've got challenges that they're dealing with too, as far as rights and other things. But I think the thing that's interesting, we were talking about this downstairs, and it's too bad that we couldn't just play that back, is how that all. So one of the questions I posed to the guys was, is there any true empirical data that says that because of the algorithms, because of whatever there may be, that an individual music listener now, instead of engaging with 10 artists that they really liked, is now engaging with 100, but instead of spending an hour with each of them, they're spending 5 minutes, and what does that mean? Now, just being hyper analytical about it, it means that there's 100 artists that are being pushed down, the revenues are getting spread out more across more people, so you're not having as many people breaking out, which kind of sounds empirically. You can go to, there's 2 or 3 that broke 2 million sales last year. And how does that investment come in, and what's the level of investment that needs to be put into the system for each of those individual artists? And I don't think we know the answer to that yet, because if it's being taken out of traditional hands of curation where people follow beggars or whatever it might be, and you're discovering those in your own way, then how does the investment that's required come into that chain? And I think it's an interesting question that we have to think about, because people have to live, they have basic costs that go along with this, and the days of advance of a $300,000 advance are very slim in between. It's a new model. And so not just the revenue side, but the investment side too is working its way through the system now.
Yeah, and one of the other things I think that your sort of hypothesis raises is this question about not just how the investment flows, but who it flows to, right? And as artists sort of approach this ecosystem, to use the word you hate, does A&R change? Does the existence of this new consumptive behavior, which is very multimedia-based, very video-based, very social, is 3 chords and the truth enough anymore? Is it about 10 songs, or is it about 100 amazing videos, 50 of which may be cover songs? Rami, talk a little bit about your perspective on artists.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture, because a lot of these success stories you're seeing are not things that are manufactured by labels, but are manufactured by the artists themselves, coming out of, whether it's a team that's done that, or whether they captured lightning in a bottle with some sort of viral hit musically or visually. So I think, one of the conversations we had downstairs was understanding that maybe a major label or a label at all just kind of changes the way it thinks about revenues and about the assets that are created. So we were talking about recorded music as actually being low on the totem pole in contrast to the other opportunities, whether it's licensing or product placement within videos. So to me, there isn't kind of one shot, and at the end of the day, I feel like the label actually gets the artist these days once it's baked in some form. It doesn't mean that it's finished and the brand is perfect, but at the end of the day, someone like Carmen, the covers they were doing for a year were A&R'd by their manager. They weren't just doing covers in their bedroom. This was thought of, and this was strategic. And so I think going kind of to the label of the future kind of question in general, I mean, I always thought of, wouldn't it be great if you had managers who had money? Because at the end of the day, the best teams I see are the managers running the stuff. When you have great supportive labels, that adds icing. But at the end of the day, the ideas I'm seeing, at least in my experiences with the 30 clients that I run in the US, are hotshot managers with great teams, willing to try a bunch of things and fail, but failing quickly, and then kind of going with what works. So almost like optimizing, the content based on what's coming back. And that's what we do at our company, is basically program and create content and listen to the analytics coming off of the different social systems, and then, create stuff that the fans want to see based on what the fans have said they want to see. Right.
So Matt, as you think about A&R, does your A&R process change at all in this environment? Is it 3 chords and the truth still for you? Is that what comes first, or is it a great team with a fully realized sense of brand and image, a multimedia strategy, comfort in social media, tools, etc.?
I think it's a great record. I mean, it might be an outdated or an outmoded sort of opinion, but I mean, I think that yes, all those things are kind of necessary, and for us to be as kind of like I think we're being pushed to be more creative than we've ever had to be. You know, I think that we've become you know, a company that we have to create content. You know, it wasn't something that, you know, 4, 5, 6 years ago where we had to worry too much about. But I think it all for us kind of comes back to signing great bands who are active or who we perceive to be active. And so, you know, yes, I think subtly it is affecting our A&R. I mean, you don't want to sign a band who you feel is just going to kind of sit around, not do the touring, not do the engagement online, not do the things that we sort of need. On the other hand, it's like sometimes, you know, if you have something great, you can really kind of make a lot of hay with it.
But I have a question to that. So how much of your signing is based on social media stats or some sort of stat coming from somewhere, whether it could be ticket sales also, but like, are you, in your signing process, is that a major weight in terms of the signing, or does music come first?
I think music comes first. I don't just think that, I know that.
You know, I had this, I used to hear this story all the time from my former boss at Warner Leor, who used to say that one day he got dragged into a meeting by a whole bunch of execs at Atlantic who were super excited about this artist, Tila Tequila. So they were, you know, jumping up and down, everyone's trying to sign her, and everyone was, you know, we have to do this now, and, you know, the question was, you know, can she sing for us? And the answer was no. And needless to say, we didn't sign her, and, you know, it was later revealed that a lot of her, you know, activity was manufactured, and, you know, I don't see her anywhere as a successful recording artist. So I think that the point of all this is, I think there's no question that being engaged and active in social media and having that talent as an artist is an amazing help in today's business, and really critical in many ways. And if the artist isn't able to do it and really take responsibility for it the right way, then their partners need to help them get there as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if there isn't the right music, if there isn't the right song, then you really have nothing. Because it's still a hit-driven business.
Right, so 3 chords in the truth isn't enough, but it also may not, in and of itself, be sufficient.
But it's not a hits-driven business, I mean, anymore, right? I mean, in the sense that, well, it really comes down to what we'll talk. It comes down to what your definition of the business, right? I mean, if your definition of the business is that you're trying to make a bunch of money, right, which is probably what, you know, everybody really wants, but only half the artists will admit it, is the case, then that's true. But if you're an artist that's sitting out here kind of working through these new and doesn't have, and there's only so many slots to fill, but people are still surviving, and we were talking about this, whether there are more artists today or if it's just that we're aware of them because we have the tools to see them now. But if you argue that there's only, I mean, there's only three 2 million sellers, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Last year? Yeah. Okay, and then you go to singles. I don't know how many singles there were that sold over 1 million. And, you know, there's something happening that's deconstructing that into there being more opportunity, but the opportunity is smaller, right?
It doesn't change it from being a hit-driven business.
No, well,
Just changes the magnitude of the hit. Right?
yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like there's the definition of a hit, but the business. What is the minimum level of business that you have to have for it to be a business versus a hobby?
That's really the question of what is the label of the future, and I think one of the things that informs is the label of the future needs to have a infrastructure and a construction that allows it to be agile, and allows it to partner with digital services, and allows it to operate on a different overhead. Because, you know, I think that is a huge challenge that at the major label level, you know, I would find concerning, given the direction of the business and the fact that the barriers to entry are down to one barrier, which would be radio.
I mean, you know, I think there's always been a duality in the industry. I mean, the hit-driven system is one that we don't, you know, as beggars, we've never really sort of engaged in, yet, you know, we're a very successful business, and in fact, you know, the last 3 years have been, you know, some of our most successful in the 16 years we've been, or 17 years we've been operating in the U.S. So I think that, you know, I mean, the hit-driven system exists, and there might be a kind of flattening there, but I mean, as far as you know, being able to run a business, a successful business, I think the opportunities are still there, and I think they're there for people to kind of rise up. You know, I mean, obviously, Beggars is a large entity. I mean, there are other labels who are kind of coming up, you know, with good A&R, with interesting creative ideas. And I think with flexibility, it's like, who you're working with and how you engage them and how you kind of monetize them, or how you sort of use them to create awareness for a band and build a following. Those are all things that I think that we always have to be kind of.
So I want to keep on this thread because John's point was a really good one, and it was the idea that Ken said something earlier that more people are playing the lottery and the prize is bigger, and I think he's a brilliant guy, and everything else he said was right, and that was totally wrong. More people are playing more people are in the lottery, but they're not paying to enter, right? The prize seems to be, at least as it's just recorded music, sales of recorded music, the same. So you have this pool or shrinking, dramatically shrinking, right, with more entrants. So the lottery prize is getting smaller. But this idea of demand for music and outlets for music and being compensated for the things that come from and with music, that seems like maybe it's getting bigger. And it's just about if you're going to be a label of the future, an investor in artists, you have to be nimble enough, flexible enough, prepared to go out and get the money. Everybody at this table is involved in that. I want to talk about your increasing in your licensing business, but I want to turn to Jesse real quick because Jesse's gone after the money in a very alternative way that I think is really interesting. So talk a little bit about what that means for you in your business.
You mentioned, 12 Point is running a record label hobby, and that was sort of a line that we balanced for many years. We started our label in our dorm room at NYU, and we always kind of pushed and kind of struggled to get past that. We actually wound up raising capital from angel investors. We definitely wouldn't have been able to do it if we were just trying to sign bands to record deals. We structured a new model for ourselves as a record label. It's young guys with an understanding of the music business, with pretty good relationships. We've been doing this for about 8 years. And the model that we presented to investors was, well, let's not just invest in bands and help them navigate the music industry. Let's also invest in startups and help technical co-founders and guys who are building great products navigate the music industry, because there are some great technologies out there that really could benefit the industry, and the guys who are building those products can't get to the business. Well, we're guys that know how to do that with indie musicians. Why don't we shift our product or expand our product to also investing in startups? To wrap it up, really what we've learned is that the process of investing in a band and giving them some money to turn their demo into an album and then marketing that to the industry is almost identical to giving a little bit of cash, I'm talking $50K or less, to a startup, helping them kind of refine their product, and then doing the same thing, marketing it to the music industry, building it in a way where it resonates with music consumers. So for us, we have a new asset group.
And leveraging your relationship with your artists to help,
that's a big part of it, is our artists on our label benefit from the startups that we work with.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So Matt, your sort of attention to licensing, and you're reinforcing that part of your business. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, licensing has always kind of been a part of the business. I mean, in the last few years as well, we've kind of expanded sort of the number of people kind of doing it worldwide. I mean, we have 2 people here in New York, 1 person out in LA. And, I think that the licensing, I mean, we're still doing traditional licensing, like we take one of our artists' song, you give it to a TV show, it's played, you get paid. Yeah. But I mean, our licensing department needs to think, start thinking very differently about it. And we're doing things, working with brand, working with Sonos, providing band to do, to kind of partner with a brand, getting paid, band getting paid, we getting paid for licensing, and even like content creation, sort of like getting a band of ours, 4-minute feature sort of with a partner, and then sort of licensing music out to that partner as well to kind of include in that. I mean, we're finding new ways of kind of wrestling money out of these kind of new models.
Do you do 360 deals with your artists?
We do not.
And do you do brand licensing deals?
We don't.
You don't. Okay. So the dangling question is why? Do you want to answer that?
Well, I mean, I think, again, it goes back to resourcing. We're a record label, and I think that what we want to concentrate on philosophically is doing what we do really well. We don't do 360 deals because we don't have the resources to sort of to properly manage merchandise deals and live deals and all of that stuff. I mean, we're operating sort of on a precarious level of sort of like overhead, being here in New York with a lot of people and doing the right things and sort of like making a business out of sort of mid-level sales. So I think that we have to be careful that we're not over sort of overextending ourselves for bands and management. And I mean, a lot of the artists that we work with, I mean, some choose to sort of do some of this stuff on their own, some choose to sort of work with other people. But for the moment, we don't really feel like it's something that's within our ability to do.
Rami, talk a little bit about how the audience works to create opportunities for artists to find these new sources of revenue. Artists, labels, investors, content owners.
What we were just talking about here, I think, is exactly how we're thinking about it, is finding new money to get things done. So a lot of my time is spent trying to find money for music videos for my artists. So going to different clothing brands or beverage brands and saying, look, we're going to do this great video with this artist who has a killer social reach. We can quantify and qualify that. We can talk about the demo it's going to hit, and also give you feedback from how that piece of content did. So we're doing a lot of that to offset costs for music videos, which is something that normally a label would pay for, but oftentimes we'll work with a label who has $20K to give to it, but we need $50K for it, so we'll go and get it from a brand. But from our standpoint, and this is kind of more going into the way in which we think more like a label, even though we're not really a label, is how can we then leverage that piece of content that we created to make more business opportunities. One of our main focuses right now is merch. So I just produced a video right before the new year with a big dubstep artist where we created t-shirts in-house that we did print on demand and used that video. Yeah, we made money from sponsorship, but we really used that video as a commercial for the t-shirts, and then created a whole strategy around that. And we're able to sell a ton online, at which point Hot Topic took notice based on our numbers, and now we're in retail stores. That's an example of very simple stuff that people have been doing for years. It's product placement, it's merchandising. We really learned it from working with LMFAO and actually hired their creative director because of it, because that's the way in which they built their entire brand. You go to an LMFAO show, there's a culture there. It's not just merch. It's not just a t-shirt that says every day I'm shuffling or I'm in Miami Beach. It's like a way of being that they've created. You look at the Grateful Dead, you look at Lady Gaga. I mean, these are people who've created cultures. And that's where social, I really think, is actually really important. And I think that if you look at the artists who are killing, social is the reason why they're killing, and it's because they've established that bond between the artist and the fan. The label, people don't want to buy, beggars actually is an exception, but people don't want to buy from brands. They want to buy from the artists and the people they love. Do you want to buy an Usher ticket from Live Nation, or do you want to buy an Usher ticket from Usher, with a personalized message from Usher? So that's really what we're focusing on in terms of that direct fan connection and seeing how we can leverage that. And even though we have kind of label-like services, at the end of the day, like recorded music, we'd rather give it away for free. Obviously, there still is viability with it. There still is your Taylor Swifts, and I'm not discounting any of that. And there's levels to all of this, by the way, with success. It's like something that might be successful to me, that's in, the young six figures is a drop in the bucket for a major. So I'm, by no means am I saying this is a new model that's going to destroy everything at all. I think there's levels, and as long as we have corporate culture, you're going to have corporate music companies that are going to be making corporate music for the masses, and I actually don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I like a lot of that music that comes out of it.
I think the interesting thing is the same things that are critical promotional and marketing exercises are also revenue drivers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And how can you turn that around? And then the other thing we talk about all the time at our company is, you all of a sudden have new inventory for brands to get a part of, quite frankly, for labels and movie studios to get a part of as well, to promote those products. So, we value very much that direct connection and hone that and build that audience, because at the end of the day, that actually we see as one of the most successful tools to speak directly to fans. Now, at the end of the day, I've seen some great successes with moving product directly, but I've also seen some great failures with that. So by no means am I saying this is turnkey solution, everyone can do this. There's specific situations, but I think of it a lot like, kind of like poker. Like, you look at poker players, and the best poker players only have about 3 to 5% average based on the fact that they know the math, they know how to read people, they've played 1,000,000 hands. It still doesn't mean they're going to win. They lose most of the time. So that's the same way I looked at this. At the end of the day, it's like music comes first, which is great to hear from you, and that's how we feel about it too. But then we want to stack, if it's a piece of content or an album or a strategy, we want to stack it with as much stuff to win as possible. And hopefully, with the great music and great, content that revolves around that music, you're going to get somewhere. But at the end of the day, success is kind of relative.
I've got an interesting, just an observation then from that standpoint is, so you're a services business.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And you get paid for the service you provide.
But we also participate if we bring a brand in. So we do rev share. So we're actually more like partners. It's more like a JV on some level, but there are services involved for sure.
So if you brought a brand partner in and you would then participate in the revenue off that video, for example, going forward. So the, kind of to the label of the future, and I mean, that's an investment of you finding a funding source for that artist to be able to go do something different. And it begs a question that we're going to be in two scenarios. One is a catalog company, which essentially is the past, and which is fine, and we don't have time to get into what happens to those folks, how they get promoted. But then there's is it all services at that point? And then if it's all services, I mean, we know what service businesses trade on versus what owners of content trade on. Sure. Right? And it's a much better situation to be an owner of content than it is to be a services business. So is it going to be that polar where you're going to end up in those two scenarios? Because it sure seems like it's heading that way.
But isn't there some sort of hybrid? But there could be some sort of hybrid. I mean, we do own some, like, when we're making a video, producing something for somebody. I mean, there's ownership in some cases. I know what you're saying. At the end of the day, I was thinking about the fact that if you don't make it or own it, you really don't have any business there. I mean,
I'll give you a real world example. When I ran Bug, when I came in, 100% of the revenues were all service contracts, essentially administration deals. And from my past history in various different companies, we looked at it and said, it's fine, it's making money, it's doing what it is, but if we want to really grow this thing in a significant way, then we need to own things. And we flipped that on its head. It took us 5 years and 35 acquisitions to get there. Besides, and we balanced it out. We kind of had a rule. We said, not to be too financial about this, but we looked at it. Private equity was the safe money, and venture capital was the investment we made in new writers or current writers. And the private equity was in catalogs we owned, and that percentage was roughly, say, 15% of our revenue was our focus, and how much we invested was going to go to development of VC things. Now look, I say this very happily with a great staff. We got lucky, right? We had Kings of Leon, we had Bruno Mars, and it's like everything's great. But at the same time, it really was that core catalog that allowed us to do those things. And is that kind of what you're saying? Is that you could take those shots?
No, not as much. I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, it's every path is different for each artist. Things that works for some artists don't work for other artists, right. And that's at least in the day-to-day of the social media aspect of what we're doing. There's no kind of here's the roadmap. Hey, we're having a meeting. You're an artist. Here's what you do. Right. If anything, it's trying and failing, and we say that immediately. The first couple sentences in the meeting is, hey, we're going to try a bunch of stuff. We're going to experiment with a bunch of stuff. And I think to your point, or maybe you were mentioning, like, you can't teach someone how to be good on YouTube. Like, no label can be like, be good on YouTube. So maybe it's about the selection of your partners. You know what I'm saying? That's why I asked the question about social media and how much does that impact. I mean, being talented in social media is a talent. It's just as much talent as it is to write a song. And when you have that combination of the two, like you're seeing with Macklemore kind of on some level, although there's a huge build to that, and I actually think the story's a little skewed as to why that's popping. But there's everything kind of aligning, and then there's again back to the point of you might fail 5 out of the 6 times, but at the same time you're trying to kind of pinpoint what do fans want and give them what they want, and that's kind of what we're looking at.
I want to go to the audience. I think Rami's selling himself short. I think you're right. And part of the reason I had Rami here is because I think one of the cool things about his company and their business is this network that they're building. And that the thing that they're going to inevitably, as a venture-backed company, start to monetize is the value of that network for the artists that are participating.
Yeah.
They have a roster. It's not copyrights that they've traded, right? At this point, it's services, fee for service, or rev share for service. But pretty soon, that roster is going to start to feed back on itself. And I think these guys have a really compelling alternative model to the traditional, I'll sign you, you give me all your copyrights, I'll provide you with radio promotion, marketing, the standard stuff. And for artists that are comfortable living in a world of, I'm monetizing myself in every aspect, I think these guys are a real Interesting.
Yeah, it's a different proposition because like we have to go get the money then because we don't own it. I guess that's answering the question, which is we have a staff of 10 people who do brand and endorsements. That's all they do. They used to run their own companies. We brought them in-house. So the reality is with my main artists who are the big artists, we're working our butt off to try to get them these deals. Now, when you're dealing with a huge artist, you know, on that level, we've had some great success, but how do you do that with the kind of newer artists? It's not the same proposition, and for us with the developing artists, I can't bring a sponsor to develop this kid Liam Horn from Scotland who's 17 who no one's heard of. But at the same time, I do believe
But if you could put him with Steve Aoki.
Well, that's exactly why they want that, why they signed with us, is because the idea is that I can connect him to 4 or 5 different influencers to either make something, whether it's musical or a video, and then create something out of that, and also create a fan base for this kid. And also, again, use the data that we're seeing off social to figure out, well, who are the right people? Because you put Steve and this kid together, Steve's fans might freak out, and we don't want to do that to Steve. So there is a different model, but at the same time, it's not a classic record label because you kind of have revenue streams coming in, and there's new ones coming, but at the end of the day, it's normal rev streams where we're like, we have to create revenue streams for each artist on some level when it comes to new artists, and then when it comes to established artists, we have to bring the value to them
Label
because their managers
future.
are like,
Label of the future.
I guess my question there would be, and this kind of goes back to your this idea that this idea that you're talking about, sort of this alternative kind of environment. Like, is there actually enough money? I mean, will we reach a point where there will be enough revenue? Because from my perspective, obviously the label is providing a lot of value for an artist, on many levels, and this label of the future question, can people really exist without labels or something functioning? I mean, the traditional label might look very different in 5 years, but yes, like getting 8 million views on a song or a video on YouTube, that's a lot of views, but is that a career? Is there enough money there to actually create something beyond that?
I think no, unless you capture it correctly. I think is the answer. It's like, how do you leverage that 8 million into something? Because you see that all the time with artists who pop, and then everyone in the major industry is talking about this, and this, and then a year later it's done. It's like, again, goes maybe back to team, or at least your internal team, even if it's just 2 people in a band. Where are you thinking in terms of vision and business? And actually, on the business side of it, it's almost like artists have to become really business savvy in a way they didn't have to because the label kind of cradled them, which was a beautiful thing. I wish we had that now, but people don't have time for that or money for that, and it's almost like you need to be fully baked before.
Let's go to Deborah.
Hi, yes, Deborah Newman. Hi. First, just a quick comment to Rami, and I just want to say that being good at social media is not a talent the same way being an artist or a songwriter is a talent. It's a skill. It's a learnable skill. It's not a talent the same way.
I fundamentally disagree.
But the question I wanted to ask actually was something that I heard about really at Tommy Silverman's New Music Seminar 2 years ago, where a couple of people, one was Jim Cooperman then at Wind Up, the other was Adam Ritholtz, an attorney representing a client that was really doing this new model of 50-50 joint ventures with artists where...
Bigger picture group from Nashville.
Bigger picture group from Nashville, where in some cases, like with Jim Cooperman's venture, they were giving the artists a small stipend to live on, but basically everything else was a joint venture. And so they shared in, I don't know exactly the copyright ownership of the music that was created by the artist, whether or not they jointly owned the copyrights or not, but basically the effort was 50-50, and that the label had services to offer, the artist had talent to offer. It wasn't the same as a 360 deal. We'll renegotiate, well, we get 15% of your tour revenue, or we get X% of your publishing, or X% of your merch. Everything was basically a joint venture. What happened to that model? Is that, management companies were kind of turning into labels for their artists by doing them with a venture, a JV kind of relationship with the artist. Where is that?
Roger, why don't you take that?
Well, my sense of it, and it's my own experience is there's a lot of interest in having these 50-50 models with artists. In my former life, we were very focused on monetizing all channels with the artist. In partnership, but I think that it's a challenging model for major record labels, and it's maybe a little bit more friendly towards independent record labels and other kind of new entrant investors, because still again on artist development, on A&R, the big money that record labels make is when they have a runaway hit on a new artist that has a low royalty. It's very challenging to do, and artist development takes a long, long time. And, we're sticking in records longer than ever before in order to get hits. It takes years sometimes to actually make it work. And I think that the artist development process, look at the Black Keys, they have to go album and album and album and album before they reach the success. And then, of course, there's breakout examples of other things. But I think that the trending view that I would say I've seen at least is that artist development is a long-term process you have to be committed to. And I think labels like Beggars are in great position to win based upon that. But I think that that economic structure is friendlier for them than for a major record label that requires the major, the real, runaway hits to pay for the many investments in the artists that are not going to be hits.
Matt, is the Dell's deal 50-50?
No, that is not a 50-50 deal.
Traditional label?
Yeah, traditional label.
So we have a question from back here.
Just a question for Rami. How do you define your model? Wouldn't it be more aligned to running an advertising company?
It's a mixture of all of that, because that's something we talk about all the time. We have agency-like services, and a lot of people come and sit down with me and want to talk about Facebook and programming the Facebook page, but we see it as a means to an end, quite frankly. We see it as, if you're someone who can create, we look at each artist as their own media network. Someone like Pitbull reaches more people on average monthly than most networks reach. And to that, we say there's a lot of value. And the reason that we've gotten there is because we've nurtured it, and he's valued it, and allowed us to rock it for him. And therefore, I'm now able to go to brands and say, hey, there's value here. We can quantify and qualify this audience and do something that's specific to them. So in that case, our model is 50-50, by the way. In any kind of brand deals we're doing, we have a JV structure in terms of that on top of what we're kind of doing.
But your hand is not in their pocket.
Our hand is, it's found money, yeah, it's found, and we work on retainers, so we're kind of a mixture of both.
I would add something there, which is, again, maybe my viewpoint is skewed coming from a major label after 17 years, but I think that the difference there is that the audience doesn't have to make the enormous risk and investment into an artist that a record label has to make to get an artist to the point that they have a valuable brand in the space to drive advertising. And I think that, what I was saying when we first sat down here is, I think that the challenge really is on the recorded music business to find ways, particularly the majors, to find ways to share money with artists in a way that compels them to get more active on the advertising side, and allows them to actually take advantage of the monetization. Because right now, there's no reason why major labels shouldn't be finding avenues for their artists to take advantage of the growth in the advertising space. And the best way to get there would be to share it with them the way that the audience does.
We got another question here to your right.
This is basically asked for the whole panel. In terms of this kind of new label model, what level of control of IP rights or content creation are you guys willing or unwilling to share with the artist, such that the kind of days of you sign with us and we tell you where to tour and what videos to make, and in exchange we give you all the money and provide everything. Now with your newer, more business savvy, more social savvy artists that are really coming as a 360 package, are you guys willing to say, well, go ahead, we'll do what we do, but also go ahead, talk to your fan base directly, don't go through us, do what you do, and we'll see how it works out?
I think there's there's two different sets of challenges. First one from kind of the IP side is somebody has to be the owner. And what I mean by that is somebody has to, or at least have the controlling, could use a publishing term, administration, right? Because if an artist retains their piece, and that might be through their manager, might be whoever, or is the owner of it, are they going to be able to go cut a deal with 60, well, let's call it 100 different services around the world on an individual basis? They're going to have to. There is somebody that they're going to have to partner with at some point, right? And so, whether all that gets consolidated up or not, and then this is a macro issue from an individual standpoint. I get it. I mean, I can argue both sides of this, but there's, whether it's statutory rules or whatever else might happen, there are things that are going to happen that are outside of your control because frankly, because of copyright law. So, meaning whether you're on a service, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on these things and stuff goes up, are you as an individual artist going to sit there and do what Matt was talking about as far as content ID? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that actually does happen behind the scenes. So, but the control element of what you're talking about as far as how you deal with social media, how you present yourself, I think that's really changed a lot. I mean, approval rights are something that are fairly common now, and it's just my take on it that I think that control piece is becoming much more flexible. So the underlying ownership could be either place; it just has to be defined for the business.
We have another question over here.
I think that one of the most challenging problems for artists and artist representatives now is that every variation on every deal that ever was seems to be available in some way, shape, or form, depending on who you are as an artist and what you've achieved. One or more of them may be available to you, and it goes from everything from the old style singles deal to complex joint venture, 360. It used to be called across the board deals and a million other variations. And so sifting through it all is sometimes the biggest challenge. Sometimes you're only offered one, and that's all you have. But if you have the advantage of many options, it can be extremely complicated. And some artists just pull back and say, you know what, I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a stint at Ticketmaster, and while I was there, you had to be an apologist for the company. And one of the ways we sort of made ourselves feel better about monopoly was we'd say the only true monopolies in the music business are the artists, right? Every artist is unique, right? Every artist is selling something that is not replicated anywhere else, and so every artist has the ability in some fashion to monetize that uniqueness. One of the challenges of being a label, and one of the challenges of being able to be nimble and be flexible, and it's a challenge that Roger and I tackled together, was how do you as a company get a suite of rights that are similar enough across your roster that you can be nimble. And some of Rami's some of Rami's advantage, to the extent they have an advantage, is that they're burdened sort of by only whatever opportunity is right in front of them. It's a very opportunistic business right now. That will change in time. It will have to, but that challenge is the thing I think that the industry struggles with, which is how do you get to scale so that you can take advantage of these huge platforms and license this stuff, and make sure that the 7 people you have who are doing licensing or digital don't have to go to business affairs every time and say, what rights do we have? Can I sell this? I don't know. Do I have this in South Africa? Like, that's in a global world where scale is everything. All these individual monopoly sellers, it's a real challenge, and the label of the future will have to balance that in some regard.
I mean, I think for us it's become a lot about coordination, and I think to your point about I mean, do you let the artist kind of like, I mean, getting beyond the sort of the rights discussion, like do you let the artist just go off and do their thing? I mean, I think that in the future, I think that the ability to sort of make sure that these things are kind of happening in a way that is kind of creating maximum impact, maximum amount of revenue sort of that you can derive out of it. That's really important. I mean, we have project managers. I mean, we are driven. We are like slaves to these timelines. How do we launch content? Who are we going to launch it with? Like, what are we looking to get out of this? Like, what are we going to follow that up with in 1 week's time? And I think that those things become paramount in sort of like, if you're going to remain really sort of vital to sort of like an artist, you have to be able to sort of provide that kind of organization around all of the things that the artist needs to do and the label needs to do to kind of maximize.
Yeah, and that helps with staying power also. I feel like people forget so quickly. It's like, and so what you're talking about is exactly the stuff we focus on, which is it's 365 days a year. It doesn't mean you're putting out music every day, but there has to be that dialogue every day so people don't forget.
So you have to be able to make decisions quickly, and I think that's one thing. I mean, not to sort of like draw too big a distinction between the majors and the indies, but from my perspective, I mean, I think that we're able to sort of do some of these things, or not just us, but our whole sector is able to do things by being as nimble as possible, by being able to sort of get in and do the right deal for the artist at the right time.
All right, excellent. The label of the future is nothing if not nimble. Thank you to everybody here. Thank you to everybody for coming.